It's David Duckert coming back at you, and today I'm going to be talking about armor. Uh, in a lot of fantasy settings, you're going to run into some kind of armor, whether it's mail, whether it's a gambeson, whether it's plate armor, uh, or anything else in between that. Those are like the big three historical armors. There were a lot of other types of armor used historically, but those are the three major groups right there. And the inspiration for this video is I've been doing a lot of games, playing in and running a lot of games in the OSG online games, and the way people treat armor is irksome to me. So it's kind of a pet peeve. They do it in movies a lot as well, which is unfortunate. A lot of the HEMA guys complain about this in movies. I'll complain about it in role-playing games. In my group, my home group here in Kitchener, we don't do this. Well, I've trained the guys to know more about armor and to be able to actually discuss it intelligently. And again, there's a ton of HEMA resources. There's Matt Easton at Scala Gladiatoria, Scala Grim, Lindy Beige, all on YouTube, all free resources, in addition to, of course, everything you can read online. But basically it boils down to I'll ask someone to describe how they've defeated an enemy who is wearing armor, and they will say, I stab him right through his armor. Ooh, and I just, right through his armor. Like, he's wearing a plate of steel. You can't stab through that. You can't shoot through it. It's a plate of steel, and using a point of steel or a blade of steel, or a tiny mace, you probably can't do anything to that surface that's protected by that steel. So what you have to do is describe how you defeat or bypass his armor, right? Because that's just how armor works. That's realistic. It takes a little bit more thought about, okay, well, maybe the guy's wearing full plate armor, like dwarf plate in a fantasy game, or like a Maximilian style armor, historically speaking. He's got his breastplate, his gorget, his pauldrons, he's got vambraces, greaves, a skirt, and a big bassinet helm with a visor. And you've got to describe how you defeat this man. Getting through the armor is not generally an option. There are some weapons that can do it. The pole axe, a two-handed sword, a two-handed axe. Those may be able to penetrate that kind of armor. But if you're running around with a one-handed mace, actually a one-handed mace or pick, you could maybe get through that bassinet, but you couldn't get through the breastplate with it. So it's all about describing your attack intelligently based on his armor and your weapon and how you can be victorious in this situation. So, and there's so much that you can do. Just with weapons, let's start just with weapons. You can find the gaps and beat him down. So you could get the back of the knee, the front of the elbow, if it's not armored, and some armors do account for that. But those are often gaps. Under the armpit, in through the neck and the collar, through the eye slits. There are a lot of weapons that can get into these vulnerable areas, the groin or the crotch of his armor. His feet might be less protected, his hands. So these are all places that are usually more vulnerable than others. So you could direct your attack there. So that's one, use your weapon on a vulnerable area. Two is to attack him in such a way that it doesn't matter what he's wearing. This is usually like grappling. If you can pile drive him, the DDT, a backdrop driver, you can hip toss him into an arm bar. You can do a rolling knee bar, break his arm, break his leg. Get a neck breaker, break his neck. Abdominal stretch will still work in armor, tear his abdominal muscle. Separate his shoulder, get him in what would be like a Rings of Saturn. I'm trying to think of an actual martial art move that goes against the shoulder. The shoulder is a big joint is the problem. But like a Kimura, if he has no protection or limited neck protection, like if he has a Gorget, you probably can't do a choke. But if he's wearing mail, you could probably choke him through the mail. So then you have a guillotine, a rear naked choke, an Ezekiel choke, scarf hold, depending on your GM. The Cobra clutch, actually a full Nelson could work even with a Gorget and break his neck that way. And again, as I said, just throwing him down in ways that he doesn't want to land in. Any kind of pile driver, DDT, DVD, that kind of thing. Suplex him on his head. So anything like that doesn't really matter what he's wearing to protect himself. If he's dropped on his neck the wrong way, his neck is done. And then, the third thing, so you got weapons, finding the actual chinks in his armor, not going through the armor because it's usually impossible. You got grappling, which usually works regardless of his armor, if you use the right move. And then you've got a combination. So you could have a battle axe and come through, maybe hit him on the breastplate, realize it doesn't penetrate, then slide up, hook the back of his neck, pull him down so he's on his knees, and once he's on his knees in front of you, jump around behind him into a sleeper hold, either holding your axe or just drop the axe, or choke him with the haft of the axe if he doesn't have a Gorget. That could be very, very valuable. And use a combination of those things in your descriptions. And there are two reasons to do this. One is the realism, because you're dealing with real challenges and you're overcoming them as your character would, showing how your character deals with adversity. This is not like a physics or a HEMA lesson. This is an opportunity to show something about your character and his personality. It's a tool of characterization. And I did a whole video on fights and why fighting is just a role-playing opportunity in a different area, a different arena. So that's reason number one. And reason number two is just to make it more dramatic. And it makes it more dramatic, first of all, when you see that opponent in armor, someone comes through the door and he's fully armored in dwarf plate, you can say, oh man, this is going to be a tough fight. So you have that higher level encounter, and you know it just by looking at them. When you've been dispatching peasants and their gambesons, and then you see a guy in chainmail and you're like, oh, this is going to be tough. And then you see a guy in dwarf plate and you're like, how am I even going to hurt this man? And you have this escalating level of threats, like challenge rating. You can judge it based on sight. So that's one thing is the escalated level. That's more drama. The other thing for more drama is when you get that character who's 1 in a million, who can stab through armor because they're Hercules, or when you have a magic sword that can stab through armor because it's magical and was blessed by the gods. Now that weapon or that character is even more important. So it's to have these different tiers that create drama. You don't want everything to be a 10 because then everything is effectively a 1. You want some 1s, you want some 5s, you want maybe 110 over the course of the campaign. You want to mix it up. You say, oh, there's 10 guys coming at you, all with gambesons. You can say, oh yeah, 10 guys with gambesons. We can take care of this. And then one guy comes at you in full plate, and you know, you're backpedaling, you're thinking about your strategy, you're looking for stuff in the terrain that could help you. You know, is there a balcony I can throw this man off of? Is there a river we can somehow drown him in? Just to have these differing challenges, which again are a tool for exposition and showing your character what they would do in these situations. So I just wanted to share that because I've seen a lot of, you know, armor abuse, people making armor look useless. And if you're gonna have armor be useless, why even bother using it? Save your energy. And people making characters look way overpowered by, you know, stabbing through armor, and then you're like, oh man, this guy's like Hercules, like he's super strong, he just stabbed through armor. And have people come up and talk to them like they are super strong, and then they're like, oh, I'm not super strong, armor is just useless. And then everyone else is like, what? Armor's not useless. Like, and it creates the this metagame situation. It breaks the immersion. You don't want to do that. So those are my thoughts on armor, on why it's important that armor is useful, um, and some ideas about how to describe defeating armor. Again, look at some HEMA videos from any of those people I mentioned. Look at some other online sources if you want to learn more. All the tools are there for you. And leave your comments as well below. And until I see you again, good day and good gaming.